Now, it's very important to remember that one of the things that the Natural Solutions Foundation has been doing very effectively is going around the world and talking to the poorest and to the furthest behind countries in their development into the modern economic world, and telling them that their food supply is at risk, their people's health is at risk, and telling them that they do not have to accept that risk, that they can protect their people's food supply, and they can in fact create an even more advantageous financial position for themselves as food exporters by growing clean, beyond organic food while protecting their people from the dangers of eating contaminated food, either through importing it or growing it in their own countries. And so we've been sharing with countries what we call the Codex two-step process, which was developed by a team of our lawyers who studied the international text, studied the Codex text, studied the process by which these things are implemented in the World Trade Organization, and realized that countries can, in fact, set a higher standard than Codex sets. That's not hard, because Codex's standards are quite degraded. And that they can then keep out contaminated food and export clean food. We've been sharing this Codex two-step process with countries, and these countries have been thinking very carefully and beginning to implement that process. So much so that today, at the beginning of the week-long Codex meeting here in Geneva, the first item on the discussion was private food standards. That means standards that are higher than the Codex standards. In other words, countries are following our advice and beginning to set standards that are more protective and that assure clean food for their people. Codex is up in arms about that. We're very pleased. Codex was making statements. We have to find some way to make sure that the Codex standards prevail. Now, isn't that interesting? We have to find some way, they said, to make sure that these higher standards do not prevail and that the Codex standards become the dominant standards on the planet. No, they don't. We have to find some way to make sure that these private standards, which are higher standards, which are standards for cleaner food and therefore healthier people, prevail. I thought that was one of the most revealing moments of any that I've ever sat through at a Codex meeting, and we've been to lots of Codex meetings at this point. Now, the Natural Solutions Foundation, www.healthfreedomusa.org, is working very, very hard to make sure that you have clean food and that the people in the developing world have clean food. The industrializers of the food supply are not your friends. They are backed, first and foremost, by the pharmaceutical industry, which profits only when you are sick, which profits only when you have long-term chronic degenerative diseases. The Natural Solutions Foundation is your friend. And we're working really hard to protect you from compulsory vaccination, to protect you from adulterated food, to protect you from legislation inside and outside the United States that would criminalize your access to clean, unadulterated food and the information that tells you how to use that food to protect, maintain, and regain your health. Codex Alimentarius governs the international trade of every bite of food that goes into your mouth. Later on this week, Codex will look at the amount of recombinant bovine growth hormone that cows on this planet, whose milk products are shipped internationally, must receive. Now, right now, there's no upper limit, and it is likely that there will continue to be no upper limit on the up to the amount of bovine growth hormone that can be used. On the other hand, there's also no upper limit to a number of pesticides which were approved last year en bloc, without discussion, without any upper limit. This year, the chairman has announced that he will try to do the same thing, approve things en bloc for the convenience of the meeting. That means the convenience of the industrial interests, which are big pharma, big chema, big biotechna, big agribiz, and big medica, all of which are supported by the United States. We are having quite an impact on Codex. This whole discussion about private standards is really about our Codex two-step and the fact that countries are beginning to consider seriously how they can implement it. When we arrived here at the meeting today, we were told that we had to sit upstairs because we are a non-governmental organization. Well, there's plenty of room in the meeting chamber, but let me show you where we were forced to sit. On the third floor, in a totally empty gallery. Can you see that? Nobody there. Nobody there now that the meeting has ended, and nobody there earlier. Literally no one. Every other public observer was permitted to sit in the main chamber. Every other public observer was permitted to be in the air-conditioned main chamber, I might add. And this is summer in Geneva. Now, the same thing happened in Rome last year, but there we were met with armed guards because we made the mistake of registering in advance. This time, there was just a flurry of activity and panicky looks when we showed up, and we were shepherded upstairs. We said, no, I don't think so, and we sat ourselves at the very back of the main chamber. There was no one whom we were disturbing, and a guard came and said, no, you have to leave. I said, what about other public observers? He said, no, the chairman is very strict about this. You have to leave. And so, on the authority of Dr. Claude Moshe, the chairman, we left. Now, we have quite a relationship with Codex, as you can see. We impact it, and it doesn't really like us. The question is, are we having a sustained and meaningful impact? The answer is, oh yes. Yes, indeed. But I have to tell you something. There are a lot of them, and they have a lot of money. There are few of us, and we need research teams. We need more teams going around to these other countries and talking to them about their options. We need the opportunity to convene biojustice legal teams so that we can attack genetically modified patents